Hi, thank you. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Teresa Martinez Rosas. I serve as the Advocacy Director for United We Dream. We are the largest immigrant youth-led network in the country. I'm also a beneficiary of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or as some of us call it, DACA. The program offers a 2-year protection from deportation and a work permit to nearly 800,000 young people like me, like Juan Manuel Montes, like Dani Vargas. But instead of being protected, Juan was wrongfully removed by the country by Border Patrol, who have been unleashed by Trump's executive orders. And today, Juan is being kept away from his family by Trump's agents. Let us be clear. Juan was targeted by abusive law enforcement and deserves justice. Today, I'm joined here by 2 experts. The first is Karen Tumlin, the legal director of the National Immigration Law Center, who is representing Juan and can share more information about him and about the case. The second is John Michael Torres, the communications coordinator from La Unión del Pueblo Entero, or LUPE, which is an immigrant community group who works along the Rio Grande Valley, who will share what it's like to live along the border in militarized communities. And now we'll turn it over to our speakers to share some. I'll turn it over to our speakers, and after that, I'll share some concluding remarks, and then it'll open up for questions. With this, I'll turn it over to Karen.
Great. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us in this important conversation today. My name is Karen Tumlin. I'm the legal director of the National Immigration Law Center. And as Teresa mentioned, I am deeply proud to represent our client, Juan Manuel Montes, who's asking for one simple thing: the truth. His request for the truth did not start on Tuesday. We've been asking the government for the truth for weeks. And in fact, we've gotten only radio silence until just this morning. I'll come back to that in a moment. Here are the facts. Juan, a current DACA recipient, has lived and worked in California for years. He is one of the agricultural workers we all rely on to put food on our table. At the time he was removed, he was also working hard to pursue a welding degree at a local community college. He was mere months from completing a degree that he hoped would allow him to be better able to provide for himself and his family. My team and I have had many, many conversations with Juan Manuel, and he is adamant about 2 things. Number 1, that he had DACA at the time he was removed. And number 2, that he did not leave the country that he loves, the country he considers home, on his own volition. He maintains that a Border Patrol officer approached him in California in mid-February. He was detained, and mere hours later, he was kicked out of the city and country he knows. He was not given access to a lawyer. He was not given a chance to go to court. After an initial denial, DHS also now admits our client was right about one thing. Juan's DACA was valid until 2018. We are committed to working to discover the truth about what happened between CBP and our client that led him to being physically deported from this country. What we are seeing here is a part of a disturbing pattern and practice of a failure to tell the whole truth on the part of DHS. Rather than respond to one of our many requests for a full accounting of their interaction with our client, DHS has instead chosen to respond only to the many requests that all of you have made, issuing public statements on Tuesday that differed from their public statements on Wednesday. Our client deserves an answer to his request, not a government that responds only through media statements. And we will take our fight to the courtroom to ensure that he gets it. So I told you I would come back to the change in the radio silence from Border Patrol on providing documents to Juan Manuel and to his legal team. Just this morning, the government finally produced just a few pages of responsive documents detailing only the second deportation by Juan Manuel. I would note that these documents did not come through the usual process when counsel asked for a FOIA. I would note that they did not come in the many weeks that we waited after making that normal process response. Instead, they came only after Juan Manuel took the exceptional step of filing a lawsuit. I would note this information only came after an extraordinary amount of public attention to Juan Manuel's case. And last, I would note that this information came only after the Department of Homeland Security had to admit that their first search for records after the lawsuit was filed, which they claimed showed Juan Manuel had no DACA status at the time he was removed, was inaccurate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen, for your remarks. We're now turning it over to John Michael.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I was really impacted by Juan Manuel's story because of how easily something like that could happen here in our region. I'm the communications coordinator for La Unión del Pueblo Entero, and we operate here in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. And first off, I just wanted to say that border communities are similar to the rest of the country. From San Diego to Brownville, Texas, we are made up of diverse, tight-knit communities from different racial and ethnic backgrounds. We're people who are proud of where we live, and we want to see our communities and our families prosper. And just like the rest of the country, we're part of this nation founded on the promise of liberty. Yet, here in the Rio Grande Valley and throughout the border, the liberty and rights of border residents are eroded by unaccountable border enforcement. Border Patrol is granted broad authority to stop and question border residents going about our daily life. Recently, there was an incident in La Joya, Texas, down the road from where we operate, where a mother and her child were, Border Patrol agents entered into the stands during a baseball game and interrogated, questioned, and ultimately took into custody a mother and her child. And it disrupted the game, and the baseball community there in that city has not recovered since. I myself have been stopped by Border Patrol, Border Patrol that seems to invent the thinnest pretext for stops. When I was stopped and surrounded by around 5 agents, a number of Border Patrol cars that seemed to come out of nowhere to surround me. And when I asked why they stopped me, they said that it was because I was driving behind somebody that they were actually investigating. So this is something that interferes in people's daily lives. And it's easy to imagine how border agents would approach somebody, start questioning them, and take them into custody because it happens so regularly. And we are members of this nation just like anyone else. Our communities have rights. Our communities want to prosper, and what we need is our government leaders to work with us to create opportunities for our families to prosper, to protect our natural spaces, not divide our communities with border walls, not divide our families with more deportations. And we need to bring Border Patrol into accountability with border residents so that our rights essentially are protected.
Thank you, John Michael. As you've heard from Karen and John Michael, the case of Juan Montes has generated outrage and fear and an overwhelming sense of resistance among immigrant youth, among United We Dream, our families, and our allies. Just today in the south of Texas, advocates are rallying to demand justice from Secretary John Kelly and Jeff Sessions. And yesterday we rallied at DHS offices in Washington, D.C., and in just about 24 hours, 25,000 people have signed a petition demanding for justice for Juan and demanding that he be allowed to come back home. As we've seen and as we're acting, an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us, and we're going to have Juan's back. Right now, Trump agents are lying about Juan's story. They're smearing his name. I want to say this one more time. Trump agents are lying about Juan's story. This is the same thing that they did to Danny Vargas, whom they stopped and then locked up in a detention camp. This is the same thing that they did to Daniel Ramirez, who they framed and locked up in a detention camp. This is the same thing that they did with Maribel, a mother of 4 who was just today or yesterday deported. What they are doing to Juan is the same thing that abusive law enforcement do to people of color who are killed, locked up, and deported. They expect us to sit back, to take it, and the politicians who support them lie about what's happening. Trump said that immigrant youth would be safe. Speaker Ryan looked right into the eyes of Angelica, a United We Dream member, and said to her that she had nothing to worry about. And yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security, John Kelly, told people like us at United We Dream, he said that people and critics should shut up. We are here to say that we will not shut up. We are here to say our voices will not be silenced. And, for me and for all of us at United We Dream, Juan Montes is a hero. He's someone that has courageously stood up and told the truth about what's happening to him. He's exposing these abusive agents. As United We Dream, we were part and led the campaign to win Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals in 2012. And I think for us, it's the testament of the work that we have done together to see that even in deportation, even in the worst case of scenarios, immigrant youth and our families are standing up and not allowing for people to shove us back into the shadows and tell us to shut up. With that, we want to open up for questions from all of you, and I'll moderate from there.
Thank you. At this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press the star and 1 on your touch-tone telephone. You may withdraw your question at any time by pressing the pound key. Once again, to ask a question, please press the star and 1 on your touch-tone phone. We'll go first to Cecilia Vega with ABC News. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this call. It's really helpful. I've got 2 different lines of questioning. I'm just going to throw them all out there, and then you guys can divide and conquer if you can. I just want to make sure I understand exactly what it is that you're alleging happened. Are you saying that Juan Manuel was picked up and deported without due process, that basically someone picked him up near the border, put him in a car, and dropped him back off across the border, and there's zero record of it, and that DHS and Homeland, that ICE and CBP are lying about that? That's my first question. And then the second question is, what time was he picked up? What was he doing at the time? And where in Mexico is he now? And if you could kind of just give us a little bit of a sense of like how he's doing with this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those questions. I'll share the first one with Karen and ask her to share her thinking on the first one.
Of course. Thank you so much. So I'll give the brief chronology of what happened to Juan Manuel. A lot of this is in the FOIA complaint, but let me do my best to make it as chronological as possible. So, and you're going to hear me say a couple of times on or about a certain date. And the reason for that is, we don't know exactly the certain dates because some of this happened near the middle of the night and because the government isn't giving us documents. So here is what Juan says happened to him. He was walking late at night in his hometown to a taxi stand. He was approached by a Border Patrol officer this was on or about February 17th. He was asked to provide his paperwork, which he did not have at the time. He was then taken in a car to a Border Patrol holding facility at the border. He was questioned by Border Patrol, and at that point, he was removed physically from the country to Mexico. At that point, he then was in Mexicali. He then describes, this is a place that he is not familiar with. He then describes that about the next evening, he was approached by 2 men. He was physically attacked with a knife that was held to his back. He was robbed of his belongings, and he was beaten up. I've spoken to Juan Manuel and seen him in person, and I've seen that he cannot walk without a heavy limp from that attack. After that point, Juan Manuel was afraid for his safety in Mexicali, so he attempted to cross the border back into the United States again. When he did so, he saw Border Patrol agents, and again, he was fearful for his life. He turned himself in. This is on or about February 19th. He was once again deported from the United States. After that point, and this time he was able to get passage within Mexico safely to a family member's house, extended family. That's where he is. We are not disclosing where in Mexico Juan is today. He doesn't want that. And we're not disclosing the location of his relative. That's what happened to Juan Manuel.
I think the thing that I would add is that the important thing understand the big difference with this administration and the way that they're behaving is that the immigration agents are trying to control the story. They have changed the story. Before they said that he had DACA, and then he didn't have DACA, and then they said that he did. Actually, he did. They have a pattern of lying and saying the names of immigrants, and so they talk about reentry, but I guess to me, as an undocumented young woman, I don't see it as a reentry. It's a young man trying to get home, and it's important that we can make sure that that continues to be at the forefront of our conversation. We'll take the next question.
And we will go next to Pete Williams with NBC News. Please go ahead.
Thank you. For Ms. Tumlin, two questions, if I may. Number one, does the government's response moot your lawsuit, or will you pursue the FOIA case? And number two, as a technical legal matter, what status does DACA confer? I know that in Napolitano's memo in 2012 that first enunciated the DACA program, it said it confers no legal status. So is the government, in essence, prohibited from deporting somebody with DACA status? Thank you.
Of course. Thanks so much. So I can do both, I think, fairly quickly. So the first question about does the response, which I would consider a paltry and insufficient response this morning from Border Patrol, moot our lawsuit? Absolutely not. In no way is that sufficient. We will absolutely move forward with the lawsuit to make sure that adequate searches of the records are done and all documents in the possession of the Department of Homeland Security on Juan Manuel's removal are produced. So that will be absolutely full speed ahead. Certainly it's colored by the fact that we already have seen within less than 48 hours that their initial searches are not ones we can rely on to be accurate. Your second question about the exact status of DACA, I will only answer part, but I'll also turn it over to Greta, who may want to address that question. So, yes, of course, there's been lots of talk about is DACA status. That it's certainly not the same thing, for example, as somebody who has lawful permanent residence. And what I'd like to underscore here for Juan Manuel's case is the following. DACA is a promise from the federal government after due consideration that they will not deport an individual for a two-year period of time, and it's permission to work. In Juan Manuel's case, one thing we were calling upon is if you change your mind, federal government, if you're going back on that promise for him, what process did he get? And did he get an opportunity to have his day in court, to be represented by his counsel? And we are happy to represent him to contest that, and that you can't do these things in the middle of the night. I would say, you know, we have questions about a president who talks about love in his heart for DACA recipients, but does not go through an adequate process when someone has active DACA status, even if there's any consideration that that status would be changed. That's not sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I would add here about the DACA program is that we have had this program for now close to 4 years. It's something that people have built their lives around, that governments have created laws and procedures around, and it's something. I can't put it. It's a promise that we have been made by the government that they would honor this process, this extensive background check that we have gone through, the money that we've had to give DHS, and that at the very least, this is an attack on the civil liberties of all Americans. If DHS and CBP, immigration, ICE agents can just pick you up and return you or deport you without due process or without an ability to be able to make your case, then what is the responsibility of these people to follow any other constitutional laws, any other agreements between its citizens and the people that are entrusted with to keep the laws and enforce the laws? I think that for us, it's a question about the program itself, and we have heard from Secretary Kelly, President Trump, that the program continues, that they're committed to make sure that happens. But I think that they need to reiterate that in this moment, and they need to make sure that Juan Manuel comes back home and he gets to be with his mother. So, Michael, is there anything you'd like to add here?
No. No, good.
All right, we'll take the next question.
Yes, and we'll go next to Pilar Marrero with Law Opinion Newspaper. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you, guys. So, were you able to talk to anyone that will ask Juan Manuel after his first deportation? Because from the story that you tell, that he's telling you, he stayed with a friend. He had another friend cross the border to take him his wallet. I mean, there's a number of people that have been in contact with him that can corroborate what happened to him. Have you been able to talk to them? And secondly, we do know there's a lot of secrecy in the behavior of the Border Patrol and ICE. Often we don't know what they really do. But have you known of cases people deported without paperwork, without any trace? I'm going to shoot the first question to Sarah.
Sure. So first question, of course, we've been in constant contact not only with Juan, but with his mom. And in terms of other folks as well, at this time we're not willing, Pilar, to kind of put other folks who've been in contact with Juan in the spotlight because of their own wishes. You can understand both the media storm here and various folks have different kinds of status and different kind of comfort coming forward. But certainly, I will say that the consistency in Juan's story and in speaking to his mother is remarkable and has lined up for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Thank you, Karen. And then on the second question, we'll start it over with John Michael from your experience in the border, and then take it over to Karen if you have anything from there.
Hi, I believe the question was if there have been other situations of people being deported without documentation, or what was it? Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure if she's on the line, but the question was exactly that. Have there been other stories or people that you've known that have been deported without any paperwork or trace from DHS or CBP?
In my work, in my position in my work, I wouldn't be able to give an adequate answer to that, just because we in our position, we work on cases where generally we speak to the people impacted, and we let the lawyers take care of the legal aspects of it. So yeah, I just don't have an adequate answer for you.
Thanks. Let's just lawyer.
I can give a quick answer. This is Karen. Pilar, you may have had this experience too. In my over 10 years of speaking to individuals who have been either in detention or have been deported, one of the things that actually causes my stomach to physically turn is when, for folks who have been deported, describe the process by which generally Border Patrol agents are subjecting them to deportation, and instead of handing them documents about what's happening to them, giving them copies upon their deportation that they could read or understand what had happened. Instead, they describe a process which is almost always that the agent is holding the document, not explaining the document. It may or may not be in a language that they understand, and then merely says, firme aquí, firme aquí, firme aquí, sign here, sign here, sign here. And my stomach turns because that is so commonplace that individuals go through a process, end up deported with no record of what happened to them or no understanding of what happened and not a chance to see the judge. So I would give you that from my over 10 years of experience working with deported individuals as an attorney. In addition, I would point you to the Lopez Venegas lawsuit by the ACLU of Southern California about what we call extrajudicial deportations, in this case voluntary departures, a lawsuit that resulted in a settlement where individuals had to be brought back for the violation of how they were summarily deported. So those are a couple of examples.
Thank you, Karen. Next question, can we take it?
Yes, we'll go next to Geneva Sands with ABC News. Please go ahead.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, thank you. I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about in more detail, how he was physically removed, if he was driven across the border, if he was taken to a location that normally where this would happen, if he knows how that process went or just what his experience was. And then also, upon return, did he give a reason as to why he didn't choose to go to a port of entry to try to come back?
Honestly, without my notes, I wouldn't know if Juan describes if he walked across when he was removed, if he was walked across the border, or if he was driven. And at this particular border, it happens in both ways. And your other question was the port of entry. He did, when he attempted to come back in, was at the port of entry. I mean, it was near the port of entry, basically along the wall, was apprehended close by. I'm not sure if I'm totally understanding, Geneva, what you were getting at. Do you mean?
Yeah, I guess because in the court documents, and then DHS says that he admitted to illegally re-entering. So in addition to them saying the DACA status would be void because he left, they also say the illegal re-entry was an issue. So I was just wondering why he wouldn't necessarily just, try to come through legally and talk to an agent if he had been deported in these circumstances.
I mean, as Juan Manuel describes them in the lawsuit, right, when he tried to come back over the border, he was indeed, first of all, physically seriously injured from just having been beaten up, and was afraid for his physical safety, and he just wanted to come home to the country where he feels safe and where his life is.
Thank you, Karen. We'll take the next question.
Yes, we will go next to Stephen Dinan with Washington Times. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is a question for Karen. I'm trying to see, do you know anything about the 2010 encounter with CBP that DHS has talked about? And in particular, I guess I'm trying to figure out how he would have been eligible for DACA if he had been out of the country and then come in for that encounter, given the whole 2007 continuous presence requirement. Are you able to help me with that?
Yeah, I can help you with it in a couple of ways. So first of all, I'll take the second. I can actually take them in order. About the two, we've had extensive discussions with Manuel about his prior immigration history. At a certain point, this is a guy who grew up along the border, and at a certain point, he and his family had what are known as border crossing cards, right? So they did come back and forth, which is a common experience in border communities. His prior back and forth across the border and DACA application, right, is something that would have been considered and is considered routinely for many folks when they applied for DACA. So Juan Manuel, like everyone who applied for DACA, had to prove his continuous physical presence in the United States, except for brief, casual, and innocent departures for a 5-year period before he was initially granted. So all of that was considered, dealt with by the agency, and he was indeed determined not once, but twice to qualify for DACA status. And then the last thing I would say is, in terms of more details on 2010, I'll know more when the government finally coughs up his actual records.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen. Next question.
And we'll go next to Julio Varela with NPR. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, guys. I have 2 questions. One, for Karen. Grace went on record to say that the Border Patrol is lying. Would you agree with that assessment or not? And if you do agree with it, why? Or if not, why not? And then this is a question for Grace. Just the amount of national attention now being given to DACA recipients being arrested and deported in the last couple of months has been pretty remarkable. And some of these stories pre-Trump are, the stories of DACA recipients and dreamers getting arrested and deported were pretty common. So what do you attribute, why the interest now, since these type of stories have been going on for several years?
Thank you. I can get started. I think that for United We Dream, the reason for this national attention is because there has been, for the past now, I believe, more than a year and a half, a concerted effort and strategy that has been targeted against undocumented people. This Trump administration is considerably different, is different in its approach to how they are coming into contact with undocumented people. And so I think that the executive orders that Donald Trump has given us the sense that there is no priority. And so I think that the reason why these cases are so to the community is because, this is the truth and the promise of Donald Trump coming to fruition. It is also, at the same time, there's a disconnect between his public remarks, the party's public remarks, the leadership public remarks, and the actuality of what's happening. And so I think that, in this case in particular, the way that CBP and immigration agents are acting in our communities, I think it's a response to that, and not knowing what to do about the fact that all of these officers have a new boss, and this new boss has let them unleashed in this moment. And I think the other reason why this is picking up and why it's so important is because of the power of immigrant youth. This victory and the reason why we're even talking about a protection for people like myself and like Juan Manuel is because of a victory that we won. And then I believe that it's a line in the sand for
to the Democratic Party, for some of the Republican Party people in the Republican Party, and it's a line in the sand for all people of conscience. And so the moment that this administration crosses that, I think that there is a huge question about the morality and the political acumen of this administration. Karen?
Yeah, I would add just one thing, because I think the first part of your question is really about what others, are we saying Border Patrol is lying, or is this some kind of he said, she said story? And, I guess I'd like to really step back from that for a second and say, really two things. One, Juan Manuel is looking for the truth, right? He's a gentleman who's grown up in California, and he wants to know exactly how and why the government removed him, right? That's basic. He should be entitled to that. And I think that and that search for the truth and, what happened to me, I really think is for lack of a better word, a more noble calling than us boiling this down to something that looks like a he said, she said. And secondly, I'd really like to stop and say, what I would love from a response from this administration, from this Department of Homeland Security, from this president, from this attorney general, folks who have gone on the record saying, particularly with respect to Secretary Kelly and the president, positive things about the DACA program and DACA recipients. I would love them instead to see this story of Juan Manuel and pause and gasp and say, oh my goodness, what happened to this young man? Have we done everything we can to make sure that a DACA recipient is not summarily deported, and to really be calling for transparency and scrutiny on Border Patrol?
Thank you, Karen. John Michael, is there anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to add that given that communities along the border do have to deal with the lack of transparency from border agents so routinely, that if with this case we are able to really pressure the administration and border agencies to tell the truth, to be upfront and transparent with what happened, and as a nation we are able to decide how we can move forward from this so that it doesn't happen again, then I think it's going to be a victory for all of us in this nation, definitely, but definitely border residents who want to see more transparency, accountability from the agents that are such a major presence in our communities.
Thank you, John Michael. Let's go to the next question.
Yes, and as a reminder, that was star and one to ask a question. And we will go to Rafael Torres with Television. Please go ahead. Your line is open. Please check the mute function on your phone.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello? All right. It's happening exactly what is going with United We Stand. It's the criminalizing of Juan Manuel even before having been giving any information. So my question here is the whereabouts. I'm focusing right now on Juan Manuel. His whereabouts is still in Mexicali or in Baja California, and this can be undone by the legal ways, or is something that is going straight and no returns? That's exactly. And speaking with the National Immigration Law Center, they talk about disability. Does this disability have something to do with the deportation? I mean, he being unable to explain the officers of CBP about his DACA status?
I'll hand this over to Karen. I heard, just so that we can be clear, though, I heard a question about his disability, his cognitive disability. And could you repeat the first two, please? I heard something about a location.
Yeah, his whereabouts is still in the Mexicali area. Just the city, I don't need the address or something like that. And thus, his disability has something to do with the possibility without telling the CBP officers that he was a DACA or something like that.
All right. Thank you so much. So I'll turn it over to Karen.
Sure. On the where he is question, he's still in Mexico, and he does not wish to have his location revealed, so we're not revealing his exact location. With respect to the disability, I think that's a really important question, actually. So, as we have said in the lawsuit, and as Juan Manuel has said, he suffered an injury, a brain injury, as a child. It has led to him being placed in special education classes throughout his education in California, where he was able to graduate from high school and continue on to try to get his welding degree at community college. But it has limitations on him. And so part of the reason why Juan Manuel wants answers to what happened to him, and we as his lawyers really have strong concerns, is we're concerned about whether or not information was presented to him in a way that he could understand what was even happening, or if, given both his own cognitive limitations and the manner in which he was treated by Border Patrol agents, if he was removed from this country in violation of his due process rights.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, and I think that, in particular, his cognitive disability shines light into just how much the nature of the cases and the calls that we are all getting has changed. I think that we have a national hotline where cases are called to be reported, and the number of calls is obviously higher. We saw the Washington Post put out numbers about the numbers of people that are being detained and deported, but it's also about the type of people. It's the most it's people with disabilities. It's mothers that are taking care of children with disabilities. So I think that there's a question about, like, is there no line that this that Jeff Sessions, that General Kelly, that Donald Trump will not cross. So I wanted to make sure to bring that up. With that, we'll go to the next question.
Can I just add one quick thing while we're doing that question, which is, with respect to Juan Manuel's cognitive limitation, what it really means for him and others like him who've had these kind of injuries is it simply just may take him longer to process information than it might someone who doesn't have this kind of traumatic brain injury. He may need information in different format, and that precisely seems to be what did not happen in the Border Patrol stations on these 2 nights in question.
Thank you, Karen. That's really helpful.
And we will go next to Rosa Flores with CNN. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for having this. This has been really helpful. I wanted to ask about the judge that has been assigned to this case. I'm wondering if you have a stance on the fact that now President Donald Trump, then candidate Donald Trump, really attacked this judge, and then secondly, do you really hope that this judge can pressure the government to give you the documents that you need so that you can move forward with your efforts to bring Juan Manuel back to the U.S.?
Yeah, to get started on this judge piece, I think that destiny is a funny thing, and to have a judge that was attacked by Trump because of his immigrant background and his family being immigrants, I think it's just a coincidence of life. I think we expect, as United We Dream, we expect this judge to be fair, to consider all of the pieces of the case, and to help us be able to bring Juan Manuel home. I think that for all of us, it's going to be really insightful to see how any country sees a case like this in DACA. We have seen time and time again that courageous people take Trump to court and they win. Milk and the ACLU and a lot of their partners also won on the refugee crisis, and so we expect nothing less from this judge. That's the other piece that I would add is that I saw an article, I think it might have been in one of you all's publications, but it's like the response from the folks in the Ninth Circuit was if that was a threshold of someone being able to talk about or take a case, then a lot of the judges would not be able to do that. I would have to recuse themselves. So I think that we're excited that this judge is going to preside over this case, looking for him to be fair, and want to make sure that we get justice for Juan. With that, we'll take the next question.
Yes, and as a reminder, that was star and one to ask a question. And we will go next to Alejandro Lazo with the Wall Street Journal. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. Mine was that I just wanted to know what exactly new you might have gotten this morning. I either missed that or didn't quite understand. Is there any further detail you can provide, or just go over it again? What documents did you get? What new information have you found out, if anything? What did they tell you? Could you just give me as much detail as you can about what might be new today? Thanks.
Go ahead, Karen.
Sure, of course. So, I will be honest that I haven't been able to open all of the documents, but my team has opened them. We got what appears to be just a handful of documents from Border Patrol, focusing on the second deportation of Juan Manuel. It looks to be paltry, insufficient, and incomplete, and we will be continuing forward with legal action to make sure we get proper searches and full document responses.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. We'll take two more questions, and then we'll start wrapping up the talk.
And we will go next to Melvin Felix with Univision. Please go ahead.
Hi. My question is, so DHS is already saying that they have no documents, no record of the first deportation. So if that were to be the result in court, are you guys willing to? I know you said the friends and the witnesses are not coming forward publicly, but are you willing to make that part of the case and maybe to see if there were cameras at the port of entry in Calexico and that type of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I would underscore that this case is, in the life cycle of a lawsuit, this is just a little bitty baby that is not even 2 days old, and certainly we will pursue absolutely every means and leave no stone unturned, whether it's documents, videotapes, logs of who came and went from a Border Patrol facility each night. The legal team has no intention of resting until we have full and complete information on what happened to Juan Manuel, and until he makes his safe passage back to the country that he considers home.